I just did.
Awesome. I see the recording just began. I do want to just notify people that we are recording this session for students who cannot be here today. So if you ask any questions, like just letting you know, like that they are going to be recorded, but this is only going to be seen by other students who are interested in this information session. So my name is Rebecca Ash. I'm a professor in the biology department, and the other person on here is Grace Gavigan, and she is a staff member over at the Water Resources Center. And we are here today to talk about the Integrated Applied Data Analytics certificate. And this is a new certificate that we have been around for just under 2 months. So this is really announcing the certificate, providing information, and gauging students' interest in it. Since that name is fairly long, and actually, it's going to be referred to as IADA. So that's the acronym for the certificate. The other thing that I do want to mention here is this certificate is associated with a grant that we have from the National Science Foundation for a, that's NSF. So it's a NSF research traineeship grant, and people who are participating in that grant are called SECEED scholars. SECEED stands for Coastal Community Environmental Data Scholars. So you'll be hearing that acronym a little bit throughout this presentation. This certificate is a required element of the SECEED scholarship, but it is a certificate that is open to any master's student or PhD student at ECU. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. And I'm going to start off just talking about the goals of the certificate. So our focus is really training students in quantitative skills. And our primary audience are students from the Integrated Coastal Sciences PhD program, as well as the Interdisciplinary Doctoral program in Biology, Biomedicine, and Chemistry, the BBC program. So we're focusing on students who are interested in coastal and environmental health issues, but the certificate is interdisciplinary. So we're anticipating potential enrollment by a larger population, and any student who is currently a master's or PhD student at ECU is eligible to be part of this. Really, the certificate differs from some of the other certificates in data science and quantitative methods at ECU in that we're very interdisciplinary and we are focused on applied science. So not necessarily in creating new algorithms or tools to analyze big data, but making sure students are proficient in using tools so that you can translate big data into actionable solutions and results to societal and environmental problems. I've talked a little bit about this already, but this is an interdisciplinary program, and it is designed to be very flexible because what is needed is going to depend on a student's kind of major area of study. So coursework is flexible because of that. It's also designed to have minimal requirements and be complementary with a lot of the existing master's and PhD programs. So it's meant to basically recognize the data analysis skills that students are developing in their current coursework and create a certificate so that they can be more marketable when basically applying for jobs inside and outside of academia that may require some of those skills. So our next slide is going to focus on our student learning objectives. So a key issue, I think, is when you're starting to do data analysis is developing a research plan, because there's a lot of methods out there, but what methods are right for answering the questions or hypotheses that you're developing? So that's one of our learning objectives, is making sure students can plan out their research in terms of analyzing what is the best tools in data science to answer the questions that they're trying to. We want students to be trained in multiple tools rather than being a one-trick pony. And I think that's really important. And also to be able to problem shoot common errors, because I think that's a huge aspect of working with big data sets. There will be unexpected issues that come up. And I think, knowing how to think through those problems logically to find solutions is quite important. And lastly, we want students to, once they've finished kind of analyzing a data set, to be able to visualize it and communicate it in effective ways, both with their scientific peers, but also with other stakeholders, which could be members of communities that they're working with, or perhaps management groups that you might be working with, who might be trying to figure out kind of how to answer a particular question to better manage, for instance, natural resources. Okay, so this is a description of the requirements for the certificate. It requires 11 to 13 credits, and there's 3 different areas that students should get credits in. So a student needs to take one class that is related to computer science or learning a particular type of computer programming or tool for use in data analysis. There's going to be one applied statistics class, and then a student needs to take a quantitative class in their domain. So what does that mean? A student's domain is your field of study, so that's your discipline, and that class should have at least 25% of its core content be quantitative in terms of what's represented in the syllabus. So not every class in your particular graduate program will meet that requirement, but there's a number of ones that we have already verified that do. There's also a required 1 credit seminar. That's the retooling seminar that is taken by the Succeed scholars, and that is Biology 6003. And then there are 1 to 3 capstone project credits. I'll be talking more about the capstone in the next slide. The number of capstone credits can vary. That's because capstones are usually completed by doing an independent study. And independent studies, depending on your department, could be a 3-credit course, but in some departments it might be 2 credits or 1 credit. The other thing to know is if you are new to data science and data analysis, there's a lot of what's called MOOCs, so massive open online courses that are available that are really good for providing students with entry-level skills, which might be helpful for taking a more advanced computer science or statistics classes. If you are interested in taking some kind of informal training and having that count towards this certificate, that's possible. That's usually going to be via an independent study, and up to 3 credits of this can be included in your kind of development, but this is optional. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. As I mentioned, this is a new certificate program. It is listed in the latest graduate catalog for ECU, and there is a link to that catalog here. That catalog has a list of all of our current approved courses. Since this is an interdisciplinary program and open to all disciplines, I am pretty certain that there's going to be some courses that might be a perfect match for this certificate, but that our advisory team just weren't aware of or didn't provide information on when we were trying to harvest information on classes. In those cases, there's kind of 2 things that we can do to deal with that. One is we can substitute classes from that list for another class. To do that, I need to approve it. I'll need the syllabus for that class, but it's pretty easy to do, so don't hesitate to ask about that. That's a good solution for students who enroll this year. For students who might enroll in future years, we are planning to update the list of courses to make it as inclusive as possible. So if you identify a course that is not currently listed as being associated with the certificate, but you think it is highly relevant, then I would suggest basically contacting me or Grace Gavahan, and we can begin a process to add that course to our list of requirements in the course catalog. That process takes about a whole year, so it's something that doesn't happen automatically, but if you don't let us know that that course is something that is relevant to the certificate, then it's not necessarily going to be added. So this is important to let us know for both yourself, but also future students in the certificate. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about independent studies and where they fit into the capstone projects. So independent studies can be used for your capstone project. I mentioned they can also be used for informal courses, or if there's an awesome course at a different university that you want to take, sometimes you can register for that course at the other university, but get credit for it at ECU via an independent study. To enroll in the independent study, you're going to do that through your home department, and your thesis advisor or dissertation advisor needs to approve it, and they'll also be in charge of overseeing the independent study and ultimately entering your grade. However, if you are doing this for the capstone project or one of the MOOC courses, it's important for us to coordinate. So you would want to contact me and Grace early on in that process to kind of say, I'm planning to do this in the independent study. How does this fit into the certificate requirements? And also, if you are doing this for a capstone project, the capstone projects do require a prospectus, which is going to give you a plan of action for your capstone project, and you should register for the independent study after you've developed your capstone prospectus, so that you basically have a plan of what you're going to do in that independent study rather than trying to plan it out while you're doing it, because that's just going to be less effective and you'll probably get less done in that particular semester. So I'm going to talk about the capstone projects for the next several slides. Since this is interdisciplinary, we're anticipating students will be using a wide variety of data science and data analysis methods. I am personally not going to be an expert in every single method, so it's really important for you to have a committee to oversee your work and to provide advice and guidance. This committee should have 3 members. For succeed scholars, they should be affiliated with succeeds, and these committee members, one should be your advisor, and they should also have a background in your student's primary discipline. Another person, which could also be the same person, needs to have technical expertise in the methods that you're going to be using for your capstone project. And then since this is interdisciplinary, you should have at least one committee member with a different interdisciplinary background. It's highly encouraged that your capstone committee is the same or very similar to your thesis committee or dissertation committee. You should not necessarily be forming a completely separate committee that is not advised. It just makes things more difficult for yourself. I mentioned this already, but while this is a different committee potentially or slightly different than your thesis committee, obviously you want your advisor on it so that they're informed about what you're doing. And there's also a process for inviting outside committee members who could be working at another university, they could be working in industry, they could be working in government, at nonprofits. So if there's somebody who has expertise in the skills that you'll be working on for the capstone project, or perhaps a stakeholder that you're working with, it's great to have them on the committee too. We do need to have them submit a CV to approve of their committee membership, and they would also need to have a Ph.D., which could be relevant if you're working, for instance, with people in industry or somewhere outside of academia. Okay, so the first step of developing a capstone project is to develop a prospectus. this is going to be a lot shorter than a thesis proposal. So I'm not going to be super strict with length limits, but we're really aiming for something that's going to be concise but informative. So something in the 2 to 4 page range, probably single space, should be sufficient. Basically, the prospectus should provide some background information. So what prior research has been done on the topic of your capstone? Are there gaps in knowledge that you're trying to answer? And how is this project societally relevant? It should contain some research objectives, questions, or hypotheses. And it's going to need to contain a pretty in-depth description of the data set or data sets that you'll be using. So where do these data sets come from? If it's spatial data, what is the spatial scale? If it's time series data, how frequently are the data collected? What are their duration? Are there quality control measures in this data set? And any idiosyncrasies that you need to be aware of when analyzing this data set. So, a pretty good description, kind of making sure that you're aware of any quirks in the data set, because that's really important when deciding how to analyze that data and what's the best way of going about it. And then the last section, the prospectus, is going to be cover your methods, which are going to focus on data analysis. So the prospectus should be completed and should be reviewed by your capstone committee, and you'll get feedback on it. And you should do this before you undertake the capstone project. It's potentially problematic to do it afterwards because perhaps your committee is going to have some useful suggestions that you'd want to take advantage of from day one. So this really should be done early on in the process. There are capstone guidelines that we have that we will form a mailing list of interested students and distribute them. So this is kind of a recap of some of the main things there, but a capstone project should include 3 different types of data analysis. Those don't have to be completely independent. They could all be asking and answering one question, but just looking at the data in ways that complement each other. And of those 3 different techniques, we do want them to be different types of techniques, so they need to fall in at least 2 of the categories shown below. So statistics, machine learning, modeling or simulation, geospatial analyses, time series analysis, text analysis, and data visualization. I think most projects will just naturally cover 2 of these areas because it's very typical for a lot of projects to include, for instance, statistics analysis and data visualization. So I think that will be not something that's all too challenging to make sure you're covered. And I think a really important thing to emphasize is the capstone project could be a thesis chapter, your dissertation chapter. It's going to be smaller than your whole thesis or dissertation, but these things should be complementary rather than a completely different project. For people who are participating in the SECEEDS program, you're required as part of that program to do an outreach project that's called an EOSA project. And if your outreach project with a community member or stakeholder does involve data analysis, that could be also aligned with your capstone project. If you take courses where you're doing a independent data analysis project as part of that course, what we've kind of decided is that could be a starting point for developing a capstone project, but capstone project should probably go a little bit beyond what you did in that class, expanding it out. Okay, so capstone projects should have a written document, and a key thing, since this is focused on data analysis, is the methods need to have enough detail there that they are reproducible. And also you need to explain in your capstone project why you selected the data analysis methods that you did. And in data analysis, there's almost always some decision making that you need to do about how you wrangled the data, or if there's data maybe that you needed to filter out or exclude or adjust in some ways. There's a lot of data analysis decisions that need to be made those need to be well justified based on the scientific literature, but also based on your research question and the needs to answer it. The capstone project should have an introduction, methods, results. It should have figures and tables as part of the results and a discussion section. We do have guidelines for completing the capstone project, a rubric. Those will be distributed to our mailing list. And we're also going to be developing shortly a second rubric, which is for basically assessing the capstone prospectus. And those rubrics are to be completed by your committee. So you would need to have the committee members submit them to me as evidence that you've done your prospectus, and also evidence that you've done your capstone project. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of this. Another element of this is we do want to make sure that basically capstone projects are abiding by FAIR principles. So FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The idea here is that when people create a data set or a data analysis product, that product has a lot more value if other people can find it online, maybe reuse your methods and expand on it for their own research. So it's important for that to be basically publicly available. This can be done by creating a digital object identifier for your data set as well as your code. ECU has mechanisms to basically archive things online, but you can also use other archives that might be relevant to your particular discipline or field. Oftentimes people might want to publish aspects of their capstone project, especially if it's aligned with your thesis or dissertation. And depending on the journal, you might not be able to publish it if the data are available online, or you might be worried about getting scooped. So it is allowed that you can embargo the data, but you would need to have the DOI set up and that repository set up before you graduate, even if it's not yet publicly accessible. Okay, so to be part of the certificate program, as in any kind of graduate program at ECU, we do need students to apply. We are working with the graduate school right now to set up a venue for this, but this is what's going to be required. So there's going to be an application form, which is just the standard form for applying to any graduate program at ECU. We will need your transcripts, a 2-page CV that should highlight your experience in research, teaching, service, outreach, but particularly any prior experience related to data and analysis and analytics, and a 1 to 2 page personal statement describing your career goals and how the certificate fits into it. If you are a Succeed Scholar, these are the same materials you submitted to apply to the Succeeds program. We're not trying to make things more complicated. You can submit the same application materials if you're a Succeed Scholar. And the other thing is we are doing rolling admissions this year. This is probably something that we won't do for every year in the future. It's since we're a new program and we're just getting started, we want to admit students as soon as possible. So we will be reviewing applications as they come in. For people who are interested in this program, we're developing a mailing list. If you want to be on the mailing list, Grace Gavigan is going to be maintaining it. Here is a picture of Grace. And also included here are her email address and phone number. So I would encourage you to write down this email address or take a screenshot of it so that you can contact Grace to get on that mailing list. When you contact Grace, there's a couple things you should provide. Make sure to include your name, your email address, what degree program you're in. We'd also like to get your advisor on the mailing list as well. So please let us know your advisor's name and email address. That way they'll be kept informed about the new program, just because since it's so brand new, many advisors might not be aware of it or its requirements. So we want to make sure that they are also kept in the loop. me see, we are developing a website for this program. So the picture here is actually the banner from the top of that website. It's not live yet, but it will be really shortly. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but we're working with the graduate school to set up an admissions portal. That's not set up yet, but I just earlier this week finished all the training required for that process. So I think hopefully it will be set up soon. And we will also keep like people informed through the mailing list about when that has happened. And I am going to basically at this point stop screen sharing and encourage questions from people here. The other thing that I do want to just say is since this program is new, I cannot guarantee that I will have answers to every single question, but we are recording the questions, and if we don't know the answer, we will be sure to get back to you with an answer about that as soon as possible, just because we are still kind of learning some of the rules with setting up a new program here. So with that, I'll see if we have any questions. Okay, so I do see a question. How flexible is this program with the things we've already done? So that is something where I'll tell you my perspective on this. And I'm going to say like it's my perspective because I want to verify that this is okay with the graduate school. But I personally think that since it's a new program, if you've already taken relevant classes at ECU, I personally I would like say that I am fine with you getting credit for classes that you've already taken, and I will advocate for this. So I think that if you've already taken a lot of the relevant classes, I think that those should count. I do feel like that is something that I do want to just follow up with graduate programs to confirm that. Jillian.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation today. I had a couple of questions. For folks that are already in the NRT's program, do we have to reapply for the certificate?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes, as far as I know, because the grad school does require people to apply to the certificate, but your application materials for NRT can be the exact same as for the certificate. So we're trying to make that easy for you. And in future, basically years, I think we're going to try to streamline that even more so that the admissions process for CCEDs and the certificate have the same deadlines and, ideally only submitting one set of materials, but if not, submitting the same set of materials in two places.
Great. Thank you so much for that and your work to get all of the administrative stuff taken care of. My other question is about the capstone project. On the slide, you mentioned that it could be a chapter of the thesis or dissertation, and it could be also counted as the EOSA project. Just so I'm understanding, can it be all three?
Yes, potentially so. So if you're doing an EOSA project that is contributing to your dissertation, I think that all three of those would be potentially aligned. And I think that should work. It's going to probably vary quite a lot because I think in some cases, EOSA projects might not necessarily become thesis chapters for everyone. So, but if it makes sense, I think that it could be all three.
Okay, great. Actually, I have another question. Is there a timeline for the capstone projects that like it has to get done by a certain time, or is there like a sense of when in the students time it makes sense? Like, is there a need for that to be cut off at a certain point?
I think it can be done at any point in your PhD. I guess one thing is I would encourage you to do it after you've taken the coursework for the certificate, just because that coursework should hopefully inform you about data analysis techniques that you could use in your capstone project. I think particularly for PhD students, I think there's a lot of flexibility with it. The one thing that I would just say is ECU has this new requirement that I think faculty advisors are learning about. It's new this semester, called CPOS, or Course Program of Study. And as part of that, if you receive financial aid, you need to be enrolled full-time as a student in your primary degree. So the one thing I would discourage is, since the certificate is optional in addition to your primary degree, if you were taking your capstone project the very last semester and had no thesis credits, nothing else but a capstone project, then that might be something that might not be covered under financial aid based on federal regulations. So that is something you'd want to just think about if a student is on financial aid, because we want to make sure that you get the financial support that you receive. And that's something that all advisors are being trained in, those requirements, and we should be able to help students navigate that process. I see that I think Genevieve might have her hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you for this. I just wanted to know, so I have just about 2 years left, and I've done most of the coursework if the ones we've already been taken were to apply to this. And I've been part of an EOSA project that has been a preliminary for my dissertation data that I'm about to collect. Would it even be feasible for me to apply to this and still do it, or should I just keep sailing through, since I've already overlapped a lot of the skills?
I think that the advantage of doing it is that you would have basically a certificate that recognizes what you've already done. Our intent is for it to apply for people in your particular situation, or it would count past coursework. I do, like what I said to Jasper's question, I do want to just confirm that, because I think that there may be some rules with the graduate programs that I just want to make sure that they're not going to give us difficulty associated with that. But yeah, I think our understanding in creating this process, the certificate, was that for students who are advanced in their degree, that they should be able to do it based on courses that they had previously taken. So that's something I'm personally going to be advocating for, but I don't want to give people I'm 90% sure that should be fine. I just don't want to say something is going to work a certain way when it's something we should probably just confirm. But I'm glad you guys are asking questions on that, because that is one that I do want to get 100% clarity on. But my understanding is yes, it would be something you'd be able to do. And also, it's not that many credits. So I think that even if you are graduating in 2 years, it would not be that much additional. Well, I think that you should get credit for your current coursework, but it wouldn't be that much additional time required.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from people? Also, other things is, if you have suggestions, since this is a new program, this is a great point to get feedback from students about things that they would like to see as part of this certificate moving forward. Particularly any courses that, might not be yet part of the program. This is a good venue for mentioning those. Okay, not seeing more questions coming in, so I think that this is the questions that you guys had were really useful and good. Again, I just send you, I think one more hand came up, Colin.
Thanks, Dr. Ash. I know this question is on your radar, but I just wanted to see if you have any new info on counting credits in multiple places. So like a master's program, a PhD program, and then now the data science program.
I think the one thing might be like, let me see, and you might know this too, is like, I think I'm definitely open to that, but I think that there might be rules for like what courses can be counted for a master's and a PhD. So I think my understanding is courses can potentially be counted in 2 places, but often not 3. So it might not be, so you might be able to get credit for the certificate for a course from a master's and also their certificate, but not the PhD, or have the course count for the PhD and the certificate, but not your master's. So I think you can overlap in 2 of those categories, but not all 3. I do see a course suggestion on the data visualization course from Nick Herndon. I'm going to write that down. Do you know the course number, Mahesh? Because that's something that I think would be useful.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'll let you know.
Nick Herndon just joined our advisory committee, so I think that that's like something that I'll ask him about. Okay, so got it. I'm just writing that down. Going to do like one more check on questions. I think just while waiting for any extra questions to potentially come in, I do want to like maybe have Grace, would you be able to just like post in the chat your email address so that students have that, so that we can get everyone on the mailing list? Okay, I see there's another course that people recommended. Okay. And Grace's address is in the chat, so that's gavigang19@ecu.edu. Again, just for future communications, make sure you contact Grace and provide information on your whether you're a master's student or PhD student, your program of study, and contact info for your advisor. If you are co-advised, I would give both advisors' names. And I think that's about it. So thanks everyone, and looking forward to working with all of you. And I am going to try to end the recording. Okay, thanks everyone.